it's all there is, basically, to establishing a new world order. Once he signs this treaty, there will be very little left to sign over. We'll be basically managers of the Burger King instead of owners of the franchise. We went over a few of the main topics. Here's number 5, which I've pulled out. Coherence in the global financial architecture under the authority of governance of the COP and coordination between various financial resources and individual funds shall be ensured in order to reduce fragmentation of the implementation of the convention and promote access. A bunch of blah. Program priorities and eligibility criteria adopted by the decisions of the COP as well as activities, including those related to funding that are relevant to climate change, are undertaken by institutions outside the framework of the financial mechanism. That's very, very long, drawn-out statement saying that anything that is related to the funding of climate programs will be outsourced to the United Nations. Number 7 or 6, 7 I think. The funding provided by developed country parties and developed parties, including Annex 2, shall be new and additional, adequate, predictable, and sustained, which means that the funding will be sustained. It will be predictable, and it will be adequate to perform all these duties, which means it's not going to be, your GDP was this month, or this month it was this, and you owe this. It will be the same every month of every year of every decade. We will owe more than any other country. All the developing country parties are eligible for the funding. All developing country parties. That's not us. We're not developing. All right? So we're paying out to all the other countries. And I've lost track of the numbering because I didn't number them earlier, but here it goes on to say, all developing country parties shall be eligible for direct access to financial resources, particularly low-lying and other small island countries. Countries with low-lying coastal, arid, and semi-arid areas, or areas liable to floods, droughts, and desertification, and developing countries with fragile mountainous ecosystems that are particularly vulnerable to adverse effects of climate change, with special attention given to the needs of vulnerable citizens, with special preferences given to the needs of LDCs and SIDSs, and prioritizing support the level of vulnerability determined by national circumstances, respective financial and technical capabilities, levels of risk and impacts, as well as levels of poverty and climate change exposure should be taken into account. Whoa, what the hell did that just fucking say? Seriously, what did that just say? I have no idea, except that whatever respective financial technical capabilities and whatever your needs be, whether your elevation and your closeness to the coast. I mean, what the fuck? Seriously, why? Why? What does that even matter? Let's get a little more interesting here, because it gets worse as it goes along. All parties, in accordance with their respective capabilities, shall implement and periodically report on policies and instruments to mobilize public and private financial resources, improve enabling environments for investments, in support of measures to mitigate and adapt climate change outlined in Article 4.1 of the Convention. It's 1,000 pages long, people. There's no way for anybody to really understand what's going on in this. And there are several alternatives as to what's going to happen. And it's damn scary, because alternative 1, the public sector shall have the major source of funds, while market mechanisms and other private sector sources would play a complementary role in addressing climate change. Public finance also will be used to leverage private investment and to provide incentives for additional effort. Public finance may also be used to leverage private investment, which means that your tax dollars which go to this climate treaty can be used for private industry and private incentives for additional efforts. This is total tyranny. This is world tyranny, and you're a part of it, so enjoy it while you're here. Alternative 2, private funding will be the main source of investment, channeled via appropriate policy and frameworks, regulations that create enabling environments and demand for climate change technology. Financing the incremental cost of technology for adaptation and mitigation is dependent on public sources of finance and public policy. Where it is provided, public finance should be directed to areas that cannot be adequately financed by the public sector to leverage private investment, and provide incentives for additional effort. Again, public money going to private endeavors. This is exactly what the Rockefellers want. This is exactly what all of them want. Alternative 3, both public and private finance should play a major role in the implementation of this agreement. Public and private finance. That's important. If this was really important, it wouldn't just not be here. It's definitely sick. Public finance should leverage private investment and provide incentives for additional efforts and be directed towards areas that cannot be adequately financed by the private sector, and particularly for adaptation. Private funding, channeled via appropriate policy frameworks, whatever the hell they want, should be the main source of necessary investment for mitigation. Parties should encourage the establishment of a robust carbon price signal, because carbon is so bad. We don't want any more green trees or grass. Get rid of all the carbon, including through a progressive integration into a global carbon market as a key means to deliver cost-effective emissions reduction globally. Again, guys, this depends entirely on the basis that global climate change is due to carbon emissions, and that is not true. Statistics throughout history show the more carbon there is, the cooler the Earth gets. It's the opposite of what they're saying. It's like trying to ban dihydrogen monoxide, which is very scary. You don't want to ban oxygen, but you need to ban water, which is dihydrogen monoxide, 2H1M, H2O, oxide. And it goes on to say a lot. It goes on to say a lot. But most of it is just horrible. It's freaking scary what's about to happen. I'd like to go on and read some more, but we've only got 20 minutes left in the show. We're supposed to take a break here in just a minute to satisfy our local customers with our radio advertising, but we may have to skip that break because, are you ready? Okay, we're going to have to skip that break. Our T guy is not ready for the break. Listen, seriously, guys, what we're dealing with here with the Copenhagen Treaty, and I very much encourage you to look this up for yourself, is the worst of the worst scenario. It doesn't get any worse than this. This is complete handover of all of our technology, all of our resources to third world countries for repudiations for back carbon taxes. And remember, carbon is good. You want carbon. The more carbon there is, the more green there is in the world. Plants eat that stuff. You need carbon. You need carbon to survive. And you need lots of it. The more carbon, the better. The greener it's going to be. The thicker the grass, the bigger the trees, the juicier the tomato. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a plant, it's going to suck it up. These things want carbon. That's why God invented plants. I mean, we are the opposite. We live on oxygen. They live on carbon. They produce oxygen, we produce carbon. It's a symbiotic relationship.